So another day and more for us to talk about in regards to the transfer portal. And today we're going to be taking a look at 4 moves in the portal that I think we need to be aware of. First and foremost, now that Jordan Addison is officially in the transfer portal, we need to talk about why he's going to be such a big win for whichever institution ultimately gets his commitment. After that, we're going to go to the Big 12, where 2 players are testing the transfer portal, and we need to talk about what it means for each respective institution. And finally, we're going to end in the SEC, where a former 5-star wide receiver is committed to go to the Tennessee Volunteers, and we need to talk about why Tennessee deserves your attention this upcoming season. Before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I need to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Are you surprised by all the movement we've seen out the transfer portal this offseason? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, like and comment down below. But having said all that, let's jump right into it. And we need to start at the top. And of course, the top is the Jordan Addison situation. Because the moment Jordan Addison entered the transfer portal, he was by far and about the best available player in the portal, and for good reason. Look, we've seen players with incredibly high ceilings enter the transfer portal. What we don't see at near the same rate is when a player with the ceiling of Jordan Addison and also the production of Jordan Addison enters the transfer portal. We're talking about a wide receiver who's coming off of a year where he went for over 1,500 yards and won the Biletnikoff Award, awarded to the nation's best wide receiver. So this is someone who every institution in the nation should be trying to get a hold of and add into their class. Whether you need wide receiver help or not, that's irrelevant. You're talking about the former Biletnikoff winner available in the transfer portal, and everybody needs to be calling. Because when we talk about what Jordan Addison can do, that's a long conversation. And to really simplify it, we're going to talk about a few points that I think really separate him. First and foremost, he's a deep threat, but that is nowhere near all he can do. He's also the type of wide receiver that he can get a short pass and take it the distance. And when you combine those two, a wide receiver that a defense must respect taking the top off of them, as well as a wide receiver who can get a short pass and take it the distance, well, that really complicates what they're able to do and how they're going to guard that wide receiver. He is an electric playmaker with the ball in his hands, and he's very likely to put you on the wrong end of a highlight tape. And finally, one of the things that I like the most about Jordan Addison is he's listed at under 6 foot, but he plays well above it. This is a wide receiver that when you turn on the tape, you're going to see contested catches. You're going to see him go up and get it. He's really got an incredibly versatile skill set, and that's why I say every wide receiver coach in the nation should be trying to garner his attention. But when we look at reports around the nation right now, there are 3 institutions I've seen mentioned consistently as being in the race for Jordan Addison. Whether they are or not, time remains to tell. But they are intriguing, and we are going to talk about them, and I'm going to list them in order of who I think is most likely to least likely, and we'll discuss briefly why. And most likely to me seems to be USC. After that, the Texas Longhorns are really intriguing. We're going to break that down. And finally is Alabama. And we'll start at the bottom and work our way up. Because with Alabama, they've been incredibly successful getting in transfer portal players and having those players have big seasons. We can point to several different names. The easiest is going to be Jameson Williams because of the recency bias and Jameson Williams going in the first round. Now, Alabama, as well as USC and Texas, has a lot to offer in terms of playmakers in the wide receiver department, in the tight end room, and in the running back room. That is going to allow pressure to be taken off of Addison, and it's just going to make his job easier, and that's going to be intriguing. Now, interestingly enough, reports are coming out that Jordan Addison and Bryce Young are working out together in California. And while I certainly don't think that's nothing, I also don't think it's the home run I've seen some people hold it out to be. I think it's interesting, but I certainly don't think it's the end-all be-all. At the end of the day, though, if you can have your Heisman-winning quarterback work out with the former Biletnikoff winner, and that Biletnikoff winner is on the market, you don't argue with that, so it is interesting to see. The Texas Longhorns have another layer of intrigue here, though, that I think we need to unpack. Because as I said with Alabama, if we're talking about a team that has weapons that can take the pressure off of Jordan Addison, Texas has that. They have Xavier Worthy. They've been incredibly successful in getting weapons from the transfer portal as well, and in the running back room, they have Bijan Robinson. But what they have that adds another layer of intrigue is the new wide receivers coach, Brennan Marion. I say that because Brennan Marion has a deep relationship with Jordan Addison, as he was his former wide receiver coach this past season. That relationship is something we have got to watch, because even though Texas has plenty in the wide receiver department, you don't say no to the former Biletnikoff winner, and you don't say no to a wide receiver with his skill set. If they're interested in hearing your pitch, you deliver the pitch, and you do it with the smile from ear to ear. And Texas should absolutely be delivering the pitch, especially that they have that card of familiarity with Brennan Marion that they can utilize. They also have Quinn Ewers, and though we don't know who Quinn Ewers will be as a collegiate quarterback, what we do know is he was a very talented prospect who garnered a lot of excitement and attention, and if they can package that in a recruiting pitch, well, it could be quite interesting. But now we need to move forward to the school I find to be the most likely, and that's USC. And I find USC to be the most likely destination for a few different reasons. Like I said with the previous two institutions, they've been very successful in acquiring weapons that would be able to take the pressure off of Jordan Addison. When we look, USC has been as successful as anybody in the nation at utilizing the transfer portal under Lincoln Riley, and it's really awesome to see how they've been able to do it, and it really has me excited for what they're going to look like week one. But when we look at this situation in particular, Lincoln Riley has been synonymous with offensive success for quite some time. And it makes complete sense when a player of Jordan Addison's caliber hits the transfer portal that he would be interested in going where Lincoln Riley is because of the offensive success Lincoln Riley has been able to have. But on top of that, there's another wrinkle in this situation, and that's Caleb Williams. Because Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison are from around the same area, and going further than that, Caleb Williams is a former 5-star quarterback, but he was able to put on display his skill set last year. And the thing that's so interesting that we must remember, he didn't play high school football his senior year due to the pandemic. So this was an individual that the last organized football he had played before last season was his junior year of high school. And we talk at length about the monumental jump in high school football to the collegiate game. Now imagine taking that jump when you haven't played organized football in that environment really for over a year. Caleb Williams has got an incredibly impressive skill set. He's got a high ceiling, and the eyes of the college football world are wondering how he's going to progress from year one to year two. But when you're talking about a wide receiver picking out institutions he'd be interested in maybe going, it makes sense when that wide receiver would peg the institution that not only has Lincoln Riley, but also has Caleb Williams there, and it just makes sense from that regard. And if reports are true, and I don't know that they are, so it's a big if, that NIL is a factor here, well, all three of these institutions we've talked about have been successful in the NIL game. Before Bryce Young ever took a snap, we heard that he had almost cleared $1 million in NIL deals. USC is located in California, a massive media market, and the Texas Longhorns have been very successful in finding their players having NIL deals facilitated to them. So this is a situation we have to watch. But speaking of the Texas Longhorns, we need to now go to the Big 12, where we need to talk about two players testing the waters of the transfer portal. First and foremost, a wide receiver from the Texas Longhorns in Marcus Washington, and then a defensive lineman from the Oklahoma Sooners in Noah Odenze. And if we look at this, these situations are somewhat analogous, but we'll start in Norman, where Noah Odenze tests the transfer portal. And this is one of those situations where in a perfect world, you probably would like to keep them just for depth purposes, but at the same time, Oklahoma has not only been successful in recruiting guys that have come in and developed and that the coaching staff have a lot of faith in, but they were also very successful in getting guys from the transfer portal that I think are going to have big years this upcoming season. And so when you combine both of those, that's just the natural progression of college football right now. You get in talent, and if guys get buried on the depth chart, it's advantageous for them to look elsewhere, because Odenze is sitting there knowing that he has got the opportunity to play college football, but knowing Oklahoma's in a pretty good position in that defensive line department, and so he decides to test the transfer portal. Now, what's so awesome about this is when he does, Miguel Chavez hops on Twitter and wishes Odenze the best, sings the praises of Odenze, talks about how this was someone who he had complete faith in. He never had to worry about if he was going to be ready, and that Odenze showed up every day and worked, and that right there is really awesome to see. And because of that, I don't think Odenze is going to be in the transfer portal for very long. We've heard the Oklahoma faithful talk about this kid having a high ceiling, just needing to develop into it. Unfortunately, they got guys who are more ready now, and now we find ourselves here. But this is why I talk about the transfer portal in some ways being a good thing. This is an individual who was buried on the depth chart, who wants to play college football, whose coaches see how hard he's working, and now he gets the opportunity to go improve himself, which is really awesome to see. And then if we look at the Texas Longhorns, Marcus Washington, the wide receiver, enters the transfer portal. And this is kind of the same thing in the sense of you'd probably like to keep him for depth purposes because, let's be honest, football is a physical game. The more guys you have ready that you have faith in that can play winning football, the better. But at the same time, Texas has a lot of weapons on the outside. And if there was a room where they would lose talent from, you sleep easier if it's from that room with all the talent you still have available in that room. That's why the other day when the other two wide receivers for the Longhorns entered the transfer portal, I talked about that I was much more surprised that the defensive players for the Longhorns were entering the portal because that's an area of severe need, not the wide receiver department. Texas is going to be just fine in terms of wide receivers. Check out who they have. They have an arsenal over there. And finally, we need to go to the SEC, where Tennessee is making moves, both in terms of NIL, in terms of recruiting, and in the transfer portal, as they add in former five-star wide receiver Bru McCoy, who's had one of the more intriguing journeys in college football in recent memory. Bru McCoy bounced between USC, Texas, USC, and now finds his way to the Tennessee Volunteers. And this is something that I think we need to watch. And not just this situation. I think we need to watch Tennessee as a whole. Tennessee's sitting in a situation where Heupel likes where he's at, and he understands that this is a great time to try and build something lasting. And in no way am I saying that Tennessee is playoff bound this year. What I am saying is that if you can continue improving, that's the mark of success. And this is where we need to pay attention because they have a quarterback they have faith in. And now if they can supply that quarterback with the necessary weapons so that he can go out there and affect the game in the manner they would like him to, well, now we're talking. This is something we've got to watch because Tennessee, being in the SEC, demands that they have some certain level of competitiveness, and they've fallen short of that here recently. This is a proud fan base. This is a fan base that expects to win, and now they can see it in front of them. They haven't seen the results come to fruition fully yet, but they can see that it's in the making, and if things like this continue, well, it's just going to help them be in a better position to be able to capitalize upon it. And we can talk about this move right here and how this provides them a weapon. But Bru McCoy is someone that was a five-star for a reason. He's got an incredibly high ceiling, and if he can put it together, he could have a big year for the Tennessee Volunteers, and that's something we have to watch. But it's not just happening in terms of transfer portal for Tennessee. They also just signed a five-star quarterback, and I'm not saying that's the reason Bru McCoy came, is that they have Nico Iamaleava in the class. But I'm also not saying that it hurts, right? Anytime you can say to a wide receiver, hey, not only do we have a quarterback we like, we got a five-star coming in this next class, it certainly doesn't hurt your odds. So, looking at the transfer portal right now, even though the window has closed, don't expect this to shut down anytime soon. The players who are already in the portal still have decisions to make. Coaches that are looking at their roster can still go to those guys and try and make moves. And because of that, we're going to be here covering it all. That's it. See you.